Welcome, everyone, to the Thursday edition of Fair Territory. I'm Ken Rosenthal here with Alanna Rizzo. We have a ton to get to in today's show. And of course, we have to start with the biggest news of the day. Sad news, Alanna, for sure. Heartbreaking, really, knowing what we know about the man who passed away this morning.
Yeah, Ken, good to be with you. It's news that you never want to hear because you think that this guy was going to live forever. Unfortunately, the legend in baseball and the legendary broadcaster Bob Uecker has passed away at the age of 90. Certainly a man of magnanimous personality. And I know that you knew him well. I knew him well. And the baseball world will never be the same. Bob Uecker passing away, Ken, at the age of 90 years old.
Alanna, I texted Brewers manager Pat Murphy this morning, and he said something that I don't know that I'll ever forget because it was a great line. He said, "One of a kind is somehow an understatement. One of a
Mm.
kind is somehow an understatement." And really, if you think about it, it was. And not only was, of course, he a Brewers broadcaster for 53 years, he was a guest on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He was the man in the Miller Lite commercials. He was in movies, Major League. He was this unbelievable personality who, until his last days, was the same guy you saw on TV and heard on the radio. He was an
Hmm.
unbelievably sharp and funny and just warm guy. And of course, he was a 200 lifetime hitter in his six major league seasons from 1962 to 67 with four teams. He spoke often about that, and his self deprecating way was just something to behold. So we will all miss Bob Uecker terribly. He was just a staple of baseball, a legend in the game, and someone who just had an incredibly infectious and warm and hilarious personality.
Yeah, he's exactly what you would expect him to be. Everything that he saw on TV, heard on the radio, that's exactly who the man was. And right now at American Family Field there in Milwaukee, there is a single can of Miller Lite placed at his statue outside of the stadium. Bob Uecker, you will be greatly, greatly missed. We appreciate all of the sentiments and stuff that we've already seen and heard about Bob Uecker, and he was one certainly. The baseball world will never be the same, Ken. Talking about the time at hand in terms of this free agency period, I know that you have some news on what's going on with Mets first baseman free agent Pete Alonso.
Yes, Alana, and I would say this is hot off the presses if we were still dealing with presses, but at The Athletic, we're a website, so it's not quite that. But minutes ago, Will Salmon and I reported a couple of things on Pete Alonso. That his market is heating up. That's one thing, and that's the most prominent thing in some ways. Also, the Blue Jays are in the mix for Alonso. They are in talks, along with what we're hearing, one other team besides the Mets, so three teams, and that the Mets are talking to others. And if one of those players accepts their offer, well, then Pete Alonso likely will be gone and he will be precluded from coming back. So John Heyman and Joel Sherman reported yesterday that the Mets are trying to bring this to a head. And what we're writing is that the Blue Jays also are in, and that the Mets are possibly going to move on from Pete Alonso before he moves on from them. Now, Blue Jays fans and people wondering around the sport might say, well, wait, the Blue Jays have a first baseman, Vladimir
Mm.
Guerrero Jr. They sure do. But if they do sign Alonso, and remember, they're in the mix for Roki Sasaki as well, and we'll get to that in a second. But if the Jays sign Alonso, the intention is not to trade Vladimir Guerrero. Repeat, they are not intending to trade Vladimir Guerrero. They're trying to win in what could be Guerrero's last year with the team. They could play Vlad at third base some. He played 12 games there last year, 11 starts. They also could DH both Alonso and Vlad. There are ways to get both of them in the lineup quite easily, actually, the way the Jays are set up. So it's quite an interesting development to hear the Blue Jays also on Alonso, but we have known all offseason, Alana, that the Jays have wanted to do something big. They've struck out on any number of fronts, starting with Juan Soto, but they're still in the mix for Alonso, and they are still in the mix for Sasaki.
And Ken, they hope to not strike out on Roki Sasaki, which that could be coming to a conclusion here. Obviously, the posting period, international signing period, opening up yesterday. He has until the 23rd, I believe, to decide where he's going to go. He's narrowing it down, and the Blue Jays would like nothing more than to get him in that rotation. Is that a sincere possibility, and how will that work out in terms of, working out with the big club and fitting into that starting rotation up there in Toronto?
First of all, Alana, if the Jays get Alonso and Sasaki, their offseason starts to look a lot different. Now, Sasaki would fit into the major league rotation. He's 23. He's developing as a pitcher still. And what we have heard is that he is someone who wants to go to a team with strong pitching development. He's never said that publicly, nor really is his agent, Joel Wolfe, but that's been the word around baseball. And I said on Foul Territory and Fair Territory earlier this week that the Jays aren't really known for strong pitching development. And a number of their fans reached out to me and said, whoa, wait a second. The Jays at the major league level have a really good pitching coach, Pete Alonso, and they've done some really good things with pitching development. So while in the minors they don't develop particularly well, I made the point that Stroman is the last homegrown Jays pitcher to make back-to-back seasons or have back-to-back seasons of 30 starts. But in the majors, yes, they've had really good success under Walker. Stroman was one. Aaron Sanchez once led the league in ERA. Robbie Ray won a Cy Young Award. Yusei Kikuchi had a tough first year, was better in his second. And they've had some success stories in the bullpen as well. Jordan Romano, Tim Meza. So Sasaki will be developing at the major league level. So perhaps the concern there is not as great as I made it out to be. I wanted to be more precise and talk about that. So what we know right now is that Sasaki, of course, is down to 3 finalists: the Jays, the Dodgers, and the Padres. The team that gets him obviously will be elated. They're getting a pitcher who is described as one of the best pitching prospects we've seen in some time, compares to Skeens in the quality of his prospect status. I'm not talking about the stuff or the delivery or anything like that, but the same type of prospect. And while he might not be great right away, he will fit into a 6-man rotation somewhere, which kind of makes the Dodgers a solid choice for him if that's where he goes. But listen, if he goes to the Padres with Yu Darvish as his mentor, that would make sense. The Dodgers, of course, would make sense. They had a meeting with him, and a lot of their star players were there. The Padres did the same. So we're all just waiting for the decision. I can't handicap it. I don't know where he's going, and I can see any of these teams, but I will say this. If he does go to the Blue Jays, given the state of their front office, which is a little unstable, the state of their roster, which is a little unstable, it would still qualify as a surprise. That's not to be anti-Blue Jays. It's just to state what is the reality of the situation.
Do you think the Blue Jays can do anything to tip the scales? As we had talked about, Ken, they desperately want to make some sort of splash. They've missed out on quite a few players that they had hoped would be headed to Toronto. So I don't know that this is a 33.3% chance for each of the teams still in the mix. What can Toronto do to make it a bit more favorable?
It's a great question, Alana. And one thing we should mention, it's possible he has made his decision, and it's possible he is waiting for teams, the 3 finalists, each of them. Well, actually, no, it's possible he's waiting for his choice, the team he is deciding to go to trade for additional international bonus pool space. So the Dodgers are somewhere over $5 million. The Blue Jays are somewhere over $6 million. The Padres, I believe, are in the same range. The more money you trade for, and you can do this in $250,000 increments only, the more money you can pay Sasaki out of your international pool. So that is what I believe the delay is. My guess is he has chosen his team or is really close to deciding. So again, we'll see if actually what you're saying, Alana, can be taking place, that maybe the Blue Jays are trying to tip the scale. Maybe the signing of Alonso would help in certain ways tip the scale. Maybe there are other things teams are doing trying to convince Sasaki, but I am sort of the belief that he knows where he's going and he's just waiting for the team to assemble or compile as much money as it can.
Yeah, just kind of sweeten that pot a little bit with another 250 grand, maybe another $500,000. I am so surprised, Ken, that Pete Alonso still is not signed. Perhaps he goes back to the Mets. It doesn't look as likely now as it did maybe a week ago. Perhaps he ends up north of the border in Toronto. Another guy I'm still surprised is out there is Alex Bregman. So the free agent market is still kind of talking as far as some big guys, some big names out there, but we're less than a month away from spring training. What more can you tell us about that?
It is really interesting what's going on with Bregman because Alonso offered the Mets a shorter deal, 3 years with opt-outs and a high average annual value. Now, I don't know if that's what the Blue Jays are talking about with him. I don't know if that third team, if there is indeed a third team, is in that same range. Bregman, though, according to Scott Boras, his agent, actually Scott is the agent for both players, Bregman is not looking at a short-term deal right now. Now remember, he turned down 6 years, $156 million from the Astros, and Boras said yesterday at the Corbin Burns introductory news conference that Bregman is still looking at longer-term deals. He has long-term interest. Now we'll see how this all plays out. And I want to point this out as well, that just because Bregman turned down 6 156 and Alonso turned down 7 158 in the middle of 2023 before his last arbitration year, it doesn't mean these guys have to beat those numbers in this particular free agency. We've learned now, we've seen Boras work this, where he'll get a guy a shorter deal with opt-outs, the guy opts out, and then ends up just fine. Blake Snell, classic example. Yeah. Blake Snell signs with the Giants last offseason, 2 years, $62 million with a 1-year opt-out. He opts out, ends up getting a $32 million salary from the Giants, and then signs with the Dodgers, 5 years, $182 million. The total, 6 years, $214. That's a good deal for Blake Snell. So
yeah, it's not a bad deal at all.
So if it ends up that way with Alonso and even Bregman, we can't judge it right away. We can only judge it after the second deal, if there is a second deal, is negotiated and completed.
Yeah, maybe bet on yourself, get a shorter term deal like a Walker Buehler did, a Teoscar Hernandez did, and look at what Teoscar was able to parlay that into. And perhaps it's the same thing with Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman as well. All right, don't forget, guys, listening and watching, to get your questions in for Grillin Ken. We actually have a question now, Ken, and it is in regards to the Chicago Cubs. The question coming up here on the Cubs is, which bullpen options do you think, Ken, are the Cubs considering?
Great question. And it's a great question because there are so many options available. We have a list of available relievers that goes on and on and on. And there are just so many options right now. So teams are looking at the bullpen market and saying, you know what? We don't have to jump in. There are a ton of guys available, not just in free agency, but some also available in trade. And a guy like Ryan Helsley, if the Cardinals are unable to trade Arenado, he could be in play as well. So I can't tell you for sure which Cubs targets exist, which ones they are looking at. But I do know that they are surveying the landscape quite extensively, and they are, in my estimation, going to end up with at least one more reliever.
You look at the Cubs and all of the relievers that are out there, I'm still a little bit surprised, obviously, that Ryan Helsley hasn't been dealt, that Tanner Scott's still in Miami, that, there's a couple of other guys out there. Tim Hill, you think the Yankees want to bring him back, Ken?
They do. And they're in a situation right now. They're trying to clear some money by trading Stroman to maybe do some other things, get another infielder as well as a lefty reliever like Tim Hill. Carlos Estevez, still out there in free agency. Tanner Scott, you mentioned, is a free agent, target of the Dodgers, the Braves, any number of clubs. There are just so many guys out there. Kirby Yates, I can go on and on. David Robertson. So, again, the choices abound for teams here that are looking at relievers. I also forgot one we both like, Alanna, Kenley Jansen. So, again, this will all play out, and teams are going to get bargains, and relievers, certain relievers, are not going to get what they expected to get perhaps at the start of the offseason because of this glut that still exists in the market.
Yeah, the too many relievers in that pool. It's not going to be a high as a price tag as they were hoping for. Another question here on Grillin Ken. Nap loops. Are the Yankees better in 2025 than they were in 2024? Obviously, a big subtraction of Juan Soto, but a big add in Max Fried as well. And, Cody Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt.
Absolutely, Alanna. Are they better? They're different. That is probably the best way to say it. With Soto, they had this amazing offense, and Soto is a transcendental player, a transcendent player, I should say. He's a generational talent. We all know those words, even though I can't pronounce them today so well. But their offense now, you're relying on Bellinger, you're relying on Goldschmidt. You don't know for sure what you're going to get, and certainly you're not going to get most likely the same number of runs scored that you did with Soto. But they feel that with Fried coming aboard and with Loizaga back in the bullpen and perhaps other bullpen additions coming, that they'll be more pitching defense oriented. They hope to be a better fundamental team than they were last year. That would help. So again, I can't say better, but I can say different, and we'll see ultimately if it turns out to be better.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I wonder the same question, of course, about all of the teams that were in the postseason mix last year. I'll ask you the same question, Ken, about the Dodgers. Are the 2025 Dodgers better than the 2024 Dodgers were?
That would be difficult to say. Now, the 2024 Dodgers were obviously really good, but they too are different going into 25. No Walker Buehler, and that's a difference. Now, Walker Buehler was not great in the regular season for them, but he certainly was good in the postseason. They've added Snell. They've brought back Teoscar. They've done some other things as well, brought back Trinan. But they have lost some players too. So even with Snell coming aboard, they have a potential, I would say, to be better. But I don't know for sure that they will be better. And also, keep in mind too, Freddie's a year older. And it's not that he's old or anything. It's not that he's going to lose it. But all of these things come into play. Each year is different than the last. And you don't know for sure that guys like even Teoscar will be able to sustain or match what they did last year.
And I think the division just got a lot harder too. I mean, I know that the Dodgers got Blake Snell, but the Diamondbacks, with the introductory press conference yesterday of Corbin Burns, I mean, they added Corbin Burns to what was already a good rotation. Who has the best rotation in the NL West?
I would say the Diamondbacks. And I forgot to mention with the Dodgers, Jack Flaherty also is gone. He was a key contributor for them down the stretch and in the playoffs. So they are different with Snell and maybe with Sasaki, obviously. But the Diamondbacks, that rotation right now, it's really impressive. You've got two aces, two guys who are not only aces, but unlike the Dodgers pitchers, can maybe go 180 innings. I'm talking about Zach Gallen and Corbin Burns. Then you've got Merrill Kelly and Brandon Pfaadt and Ryan Nelson and Jordan Montgomery, who probably will be traded, and Eduardo Rodriguez. So all of these different options, and they're all really good options, the possible exception of Montgomery based on what he did last year. But the idea of two aces, two guys who could carry you through October, presuming they're healthy, that to me gives the Diamondbacks an edge, not just over the Dodgers, but over virtually every team in the National League, except perhaps the Phillies.
Yeah, the National League West is going to be interesting, but I certainly like that the Diamondbacks can stay on that 5-man rotation. It looks like the Dodgers are going to go to a 6-man rotation just because of the components of what is their starting arms. Another question for you here, Ken, on Grillin Ken. It's about Sasaki. Paul Vaughn wants to know if Sasaki's agent could be using Toronto to drive up the price. Why not?
No. The answer to that is no, because the price is set. With the international signing rules that are in place right now, teams have a variety of pools that they can look at and spend, but it ranges from something like $5 million to something like $7 million, maybe get to 7.5 if you make a couple of trades. So the idea of driving up the price, it's not the same as it is with a normal free agent. There are restrictions in place for how much Sasaki can be paid, and he's not going to care even if he's getting 7.5 versus 5.5, in my opinion. If he was worried about money, if that was his primary driver, he would have waited 2 years and become an actual free agent instead of going through this system, which restricts what he can earn. So there's no driving up the price here. There is a competition, and it's certainly interesting that the Jays came out of nowhere here. No one really expected them to be this serious for Sasaki, and yet they are one of the finalists.
Do you think that you still have the same hunch, Ken, that you did on Tuesday, that the Dodgers were the favorite? We talked about it a little bit a moment ago as far as the three teams that seem to be serious contenders. Do you still think the Dodgers are the landing spot, or has that changed since Tuesday?
That's my hunch, Alana, but it's a hunch. It's a guess. I have no basis to say that other than we've heard the Dodgers from the very, very beginning with Sasaki, but the Padres have been on him for all this time as well. And it's just impossible to predict at this point. If he ends up going to the Dodgers, everyone's going to say, oh, he's going there all along. What? Well, right now, if we had Andrew Friedman on the show, he would be sweating bullets because he's not certain. It's an open process, and he does not know that he's ending up with Roki Sasaki. So I still would bet the Dodgers because they're the chalk here, but I don't know what's going to happen here.
And Ken, if you listen to everybody out there, oh, the Dodgers get everybody. They get everybody. All right, time now for Dude of the Week.
Dude.
All right, Dude of the Week is when Ken and I have the opportunity to give some props for somebody that did something right or did something good or did something that we're proud of. First of all, for me, it's all of the first responders and firefighters out there in California doing all the amazing work that they're doing. But from a baseball perspective, if you will, I'm going to say AJ Pierzynski for winning the BetMGM poker tournament, the Big League live stream champion. And boy, I tell you what, we are never going to live this down. Congratulations to AJ. I think he won like 25 grand for Kratz's charity. So that's incredible. So congrats, one of our own, AJ Pierzynski, on playing the cards right.
All right, Alanna, I'm actually going to pick the same Dude of the Week, but for an entirely different reason. AJ winning the poker tournament, oh, good for him. Great. AJ did something this week that really he hardly ever does. We forced him into it, but he apologized to me on air, on foul territory, for claiming that something I said was wrong and that he was not going to have me on the show ever again if it wasn't proven to be correct. And what I said was, Juan Soto was going to get more present-day money than Shohei Ohtani, present-day value. That's what I thought before Soto signed. It turned out he got more actual money too. $765 total value. Shohei was $700, and AJ apologized.
For once in your life, guess what? You were right. You were right. So Ken, guess what? You were right.
You know how painful that must have been for him? It hurts his soul.
It wasn't painful at all, Alana. He didn't even know about it. He couldn't even remember how he insulted me and belittled me and done everything else. So we had to remind him.
Well, I mean, he could also be the Dork of the Week for that too. But that is not who we have chosen. It is time now for our John Fisher Dork of the Week award. All right, Ken, you go first on this one.
All right. This one is interesting. So this week, Justin Verlander had a Zoom conference call with reporters, and it seems that one of the reporters did not hit mute and was debating about Justin Verlander using Kate Upton, his wife's name, on his Zoom account or whatever. And for that, he is Dork of the Week. You got to hit the mute button. But I'm not going to be too harsh on this reporter because years ago, when I was still living in Baltimore, I was driving through a Wendy's, picking up food for my children, and listening to Jeffrey Loria, then the Marlins owner, on a conference call. And during that conference call, I didn't hit the mute button on my phone. And Jeffrey Loria, on the other end, could hear me ordering chicken fingers and whatever else I was ordering for the kids. And Jeffrey Loria said, "Who the heck is that on the phone ordering food?" Well, it was me, so I can empathize with the reporter who kind of forgot to hit the mute button. Happens to all of us.
Yeah, it was funny too because he was like, dude, look at Justin Verlander's name on his thing. And then he was like, oh, but Justin, I give him a lot of credit because he was funny about it. He goes, all right, I'll change it. He didn't get crappy. He wasn't mean to the kid. But yeah, that was funny. All right, my Dork of the Week are the idiot Yankee fans that decided it was a good idea to try and take the ball out of Mookie Betts' hands and almost break his wrist. But they're my Dorks of the Week. They're banned for life, which is, that's what you get. And I would imagine that they paid a pretty good penny to get those seats. As far as that game is concerned, they're probably season ticket holders for the Yanks, I would imagine. Now they can't even get into the stadium. So they're my Dorks of the Week. But Major League Baseball is also my Dude of the Week for making this happen and banning these particular fans from being allowed to be in a stadium anymore because they could have really hurt. And I would have said the same exact thing if they were Dodger fans doing that to a Yankee player. You don't put your hands on a player. They are my Dorks of the Week.
A fine choice, Alanna. No one could argue that those guys are, were, and will be Dorks of the Week, and really maybe even the year for that little conduct that they had there.
I tell you, I hope they thought it was worth it, Ken, because now they can't get into Yankee Stadium to see their beloved Yanks, who are arguably different in 2025, perhaps better. We will have to wait and see. All right, before we let you go, this is also for AJ and for our good friend Ken, because maybe you guys should have a poker tournament together. Let's shout out the BetMGM First Bet $1,500 offer when you use the bonus code FOUL. Get this offer when you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app or at betmgm.com. Sign up, enter that bonus code FOUL, and deposit at least $10 into your new account. Place your first wager, receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. If the bet does lose, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Gambling problem or concern, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Ken, that's it for us today here on Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal. Foul Territory is next. Your boy, AJ Pierzynski, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun are hosting. And then I tell you what, Tyler Glasnow is joining as well. And then Dodgers Territory with myself and Clint Pasillas follows that. So, Ken, thanks for this great show today. We'll see you again on Monday.
Thank you, Alanna. We'll see everyone next week.